I caught my sister getting frisky with a thug in the study. Busted them red-handed. My parents freaked out, pressed attempted assault charges, and the guy went to jail. My sister hated me for tearing her dream romance apart. She drugged my boba tea and sent me away to be the toy of some creep in the wild. I tried to escape but failed miserably. Got beaten and tortured till I died. My body was dumped into a pig pen, where the pigs took care of the rest. Next thing I knew, I woke up on the day my sister started messing around. This time, I stopped my parents, shut the door, and let her have at it. Be gentle, it hurts. You're so bad. Jessica's breathy voice came through the crack in Dad's study door. I peeked in. There they were, naked and tangled up on Dad's desk. It was wild and reckless, clothes shredded all over, like a storm brewing. But there I stood outside, mind blank. I vividly recalled that old psycho pressing my head in the trough, beating me senseless. Rotten plant matter clogged my nose and mouth, yet it couldn't stop the blood. His knees and elbows crushed me till my eyes popped. All I felt was pain, all-consuming pain. He shattered my limbs with the knife's blunt edge. Try to escape, I'll make you wish you hadn't. The blade flashed, red splattered, and no more pain. My soul drifted above, witnessing the carnage I'd become. He wasn't satisfied till he kicked and spat on me, dragging me to the pigs. Floating overhead, I saw my skeletal form, barely human anymore. I love the study, it's exciting. Gavin's voice snapped me back to now. I'd been reborn. Back to the day Jessica decided to eat the forbidden fruit. This time, I chose differently. Lily, did you find the receipt? Dad's voice cut through my thoughts, angrier over a piano lesson I'd rather not take. Jessica and Gavin were scrambling inside, scared out of their wits. Hiding under the simple desk, shaking with fear. Back then, I froze at the door, helpless, as Dad stormed in and unearthed the mess. Slaps rained down on Jessica. Gavin was jailed with the best lawyer Dad hired. Jessica, silenced by fear, didn't speak for her lover. She blamed me after, slipped drugs into my tea on a camping trip, and had me sent to that nightmare place to die. But her life went on happily with all the love and school money left for me. Thinking of it, I smiled, shut the door, and scurried downstairs, apologizing. Sorry, I'm here now. Let's cancel the piano lesson together. My parents had plans to use the refund to pay for Jessica's fleeting art passion. I wasn't keen on it before but gave in this time around. They noticed my quick agreement, not as mad anymore. You're careless, learn from your sister. I nodded agreeably. Of course, she'll give them a grandkid soon, to live in bliss with a big family. With no interruptions, the two burned with passion all afternoon. Gavin wasn't satisfied. He left, taking Dad's pen, a keepsake from my granddad, not valuable, but had sentimental value. He pawned it for a foot massage to please an ex. I heard this from Gavin's cousin, my seatmate, who narrated his cousin's heroics. Clueless of Gavin's new fling with my sister. Bragged about his cousin's busy love life and downing oysters for stamina. That girl's eager, curvy, fell for his act, gave him even her pocket money. Without knowing this was what Jessica thought was true love, the life I died to pay for. If this was it, I wished them a long-lasting lock on their doomed love. By evening, the scene was wiped clean. Jessica's flirty display while asking Mom for money revealed more than bargain marks. Unaware the study cam was fixed days ago. It caught their every reckless act. One nudge to Dad, and her drama would go public. Ruined forever would be her destiny alone. I chuckled sarcastically under my breath, locking eyes with Jessica. Lily, what's so funny? You can take the old lady's money and go on a field trip with your classmates, but when it's my turn, Mom says no. Isn't it funny not to be the favorite? The old lady clearly favored you, and you're all smug about it? Now you can go ahead and flaunt it in my face? Great. She bit her lip, tears in her eyes, like a delicate flower trembling in the morning mist. It's as if the scene in the afternoon study, where we were recklessly biting each other's necks, was just my imagination. Fine, I'll admit it. I'm not as good as you, just a pitiful soul who isn't loved. Happy now? Satisfied? Tears fell down, and she spun around, rushing into her room to cry under the covers. I didn't say or do anything, yet everyone was mad at me. Mom's cold stare fell on my face, her high heels clicking on the smooth marble floor. Just as her raised hand was about to land on me, I innocently looked up. Mom, let my sister go. Deduct the money from my piano class refund. Her hand froze midair, and she looked at me in disbelief. After all, every penny Grandma left me was precious to me. It was the only bright future left to me by the one who truly loved me. Mom, I don't want to make things hard for you or Dad. I know it's tough making money to support us both. But my sister just wants to go on a study tour. Why can't it work out for her? Isn't there still 10 grand left from the piano class refund? Give it to her. I don't want her to misunderstand anything. After all, you've always loved both of us equally, right? My words, which have always been the same, finally brought a slight change to Mom's icy demeanor. Turns out, she knows she's biased. How amusing. But I still want to make sure Jessica gets her way. I mean, she's eager to go on a honeymoon trip with her boyfriend, so how can I not let her? Mom's words of anger, stuck in her throat, didn't fully dissipate before Dad's yell came from the room. Jessica was trying to swallow sleeping pills. Though Dad stopped her, it scared Mom quite a bit. You little brat, do you want to kill me? It's just 10 grand. I'll give it to you. Every penny Mom earned was for you. You could even take my life, so why not these trivial things? As she spoke, tears flowed down her cheeks. Dad's eyes turned red with urgency, but you can't keep doing this. Dad's getting old, and his heart's weak. You can't scare him like this anymore. He turned to me and scolded, Lily, can't you just behave? Always causing trouble, you won't be satisfied until you drive your sister to her death. She's depressed because of you. What more do you want? My breath caught, and the storm eventually fell on me. Jessica pulled out 2 depression diagnosis reports from somewhere, attempted suicide twice, and ran away from home 3 times, confirming her depression. Mom and Dad sincerely believed her, treating her like precious glass, afraid she'd break at any moment. She got everything she wanted. I was forced into a cramped storage room, wearing her unwanted old clothes, even eating in the kitchen to avoid being in her sight. Whenever she got a taste of getting her way, she'd have a depression episode, sitting alone late at night, scaring Mom and Dad half to death, or she'd cut her wrist, take pills, causing chaos at home. In the end, everything went her way, while I became the thorn in everyone's side. Because only I kept foolishly pointing at Jessica, yelling to my blind and ignorant parents that she was faking it. Every time I said that, she'd have a depression episode, and I'd be punished harshly by Mom and Dad. After so many punishments, Grandma's necklaces and jewelry became trinkets to please her. My tutoring classes and hobbies became stepping stones for her pursuing dreams. The only thing left in my grasp is the bank card Grandma gave me, enough for college. To keep this, even if just temporarily, I need to learn to lower my head. I stood there, head down, like an extra, watching them warmly interact. Jessica gave me a vicious glare, then threw herself into their arms, crying heartbreakingly. Why do you keep pressuring me? I'm already depressed. What more do you want? Want me dead to be happy? For a bit of money, you're trying to kill me. So cruel. If having one daughter is enough, why did you give birth to me? Mom and Dad, full of guilt and softness, so different from their harshness towards me. We were wrong. It's just a trip. If you want to go, go. In the future, we'll go along with whatever you want. Looking at me, their tone turned cold. Go back to your room. Still standing here to provoke your sister? Why don't you just die along with that old thing? Isn't it enough of a disaster to us? I stood at the door, coldly watching the intimate 3 of them, feeling utterly desolate inside. In my past life, after Jessica sent me to an old man, they actually had a chance to save me. But once Jessica had an episode, they resolutely stopped searching for me to accompany her on trips for recovery while I was being abused by some creep. They spent grandma's college fund for me to take Jessica traveling around the world. When I was being starved and beaten up, they flew her overseas, making pearl bracelets by the ocean in New Zealand. When I died, they were hosting a grand birthday party for her. When asked about me casually, they sneered, "We don't know which man she ran off with." Such a disgrace, we wasted 20 years raising her for nothing. Closing the door, I pulled myself away from others' familial ties and buried myself in exam prep. I missed my college entrance exams in my past life. I was filled with regret. This time, I'm taking control. And this broken home and my parents who refuse to wake from their slumber, I'm done with this life. Jessica got her field trip after all. On Gavin's social media, the latest photo shows her in his embrace, smiling, eyes full of happiness and contentment. I chuckled, shaking my head. How much sincerity was there from someone who treated her as a plaything? A few sweet words, a handful of cheap roses, that's all it took for Jessica to call it love. How laughable. Our literature teacher recently mentioned in class that early blooms wither early. In the chilly spring, you should take root and absorb warmth, not flaunt. When the main trunk grows into the clouds, only then can that blooming splendor color half the sky. We shouldn't rush things. They'll come when the time is right. I totally agree, smiled a bit, and turned off my phone. The now dark screen showed a text from the popular guy in the class next door asking me to a movie. I can't even see a way out for myself, so how could I expect to find love? I put my head down and tackled another tough math problem. Even though I'm slow, my accuracy's improving. I lifted my head again, and it was already late at night. Out of all the city lights, not one was left on for me. But in my heart, I've lit a fire just for myself, waiting for the day when my youth is fully spent so I can yell out loud, I have no regrets. In a past life, my life was frozen at its most beautiful age. Trapped in a cage with no sight of the vast sky. This time around, I'm going to break free from those chains holding me back and chase a brighter future. But out of nowhere, my mom slapped me across the face. Your hands are dirty from picking up trash. Not only did you steal Jessica's clothes, but now you're stealing my jewelry too. I'm giving you one last chance to return my gold necklace, or you won't have a place in this house. She hit me so hard that my cheek quickly swelled up, yet she didn't stop there. Pushed around and on the verge of tears, she said, "I'm just unlucky. What should have arrived early came late, and what shouldn't have come arrived first." Always blaming me for coming into her life before she was even legally married, becoming her life's half-baked disgrace, and yet, the real reason for this mess, my dad, showed no guilt. He stood there, arms akimbo, yelling at me like a judge, "How could we have raised someone like you? We should have listened to your mom and not saved the money. We should have had you taken care of. Hurry up and kneel to apologize to your mom, and get her an even bigger, heavier gold necklace." Holding my burning cheek, I finally understood what was happening. My mom's gold necklace went missing, and without a second thought, they blamed it on me. But I clearly remembered Jessica buying Gavin a fancy scarf for his birthday a few days ago. Where'd she get the money for that? But my parents would never suspect their beloved daughter. They just pile the blame on me. They even took it as a chance to get me to give up the bank card my grandma left me. Looking at the security camera by their bedroom door, I smiled. It's okay, Mom and Dad, I've already reported it to the police. I'm not scared of having a criminal record. If I did it, I'll face the music, no matter how long the time. After all, the police won't cover up for any criminal. The ones who just demanded my apology a moment ago were now in shock. They exchanged hesitant glances. Trying to stifle my sarcasm, I pointed to the camera. That'll catch me if I've ever stepped foot in your room. But I haven't. My mom frowned and said, "Just wait, see what happens," as she went to make a confirming phone call. "Jessica, sweetie, I'm not accusing you, okay? I'm just asking if you took the necklace to wear. It's fine if you did since it was meant for you. Mom's just worried someone broke in and stole it, that's all." Whatever was said on the other end must not have been good news. When my parents hung up, their faces weren't looking good. "What are you standing there for? Call the police to explain. It was just a misunderstanding. Or do you want your sister sent to jail?" Even though I was the one who got accused and slapped, they were the ones fuming with rage. I'll never receive an apology from them. They're always so convinced they're right, as if justice is forever on their side. Okay, but I want to move into the school dorms to avoid any more misunderstandings. Can I do that? To avoid the endless cycle of depression and their fury affecting my life, I applied to live on campus. After all, I couldn't spread my wings at home. Since getting Jessica out of trouble was their priority, and because boarding didn't cost them anything extra, they agreed after cursing me out for a while. I managed to move to the dorms, taking the property deed with me. I pleaded with the dorm matron and managed to become roommates with the top girl in our class, marking my first step towards my dreams. Amy will become the only direct entrant from our city this year. Her score in the last practice exam was nearly perfect, setting a national record. I can't stand on a giant's shoulders, but riding the wind she created might be enough to let a little ant like me soar. So I follow Amy around, learning her discipline, using her achievements as motivation. Even if I only improve by 5 or 10 points, it's a step closer to my dreams. I can't choose where I was born, but I can choose how to carve out the rest of my life. So I grit my teeth, push forward with heavy steps, leaving my chaotic home behind. 2 weeks flew by, and Jessica was full of herself, bragging about all the fun she had. I just smiled slightly and pulled out the notes I worked so hard to borrow from the top student, copying them day and night. After my first monthly test post-rebirth, I realized my basics were shakier than I assumed. Weeks of sleepless effort couldn't erase the damage from 3 years of slacking off. I was still at the bottom of the class. But youth is all about persistence. If 2 weeks isn't enough, 10 will. They just need to push forward. As long as I don't give up, the future is still unwritten. But some people aren't keen on letting me succeed. The notes I organized and the exam papers I collected were scattered all over the floor. Jessica, with her legs crossed, sat on my bed, dirty shoes smudging the fresh sheets. "Where's the money Gran left you? Lend me some, all right? I'll pay you back, promise." She popped her gum. In just a month, she'd picked up a crass, annoying attitude. I silently picked up the scattered papers, piecing together my jumbled life. Jessica deliberately stepped on my hand as I reached for a paper, grinding down with force. Not giving it up. Saving it for a funeral? I'm also her granddaughter. Just 'cause she took care of you doesn't mean all her money's yours. Give me half, and I won't bother you anymore, deal? She lazily kicked my papers, her look of disdainful charity in her eyes. Her grandma, really? Jessica never once called her grandma. It was always the old lady or the ragpicker. She didn't even wear mourning clothes at the funeral. How dare she call herself Grandma's granddaughter? That money was something Grandma saved, knowing full well how my parents are, to help me through life, making sure I wouldn't wilt under their favoritism during my brightest years. Even though she's having a tough time herself, she's busy cleaning toilets, the dirtiest and most exhausting job. She also goes around collecting plastic bottles and cardboard just to pay for my school and living expenses. She sold the old family house for $200,000 and left it all for me as a fallback. That eventually led to a fallout with her parents, and she passed away in her bed, with them full of resentment. Why would I give the love and protection she had for me to them? When I didn't budge, she pressed harder with her foot, but I suddenly pushed her back, making her stumble. "Got guts to push me?" she said, raising a hand to slap me, but I grabbed her wrist. "There's no camera in my room. You like accusing me, right? What if I really make you bleed for once?" Fear flashed in her eyes, but she threatened, "If you dare lay a finger on me, I'll..." I struck her twice, leaving her shocked. "So you'll run off and accuse me of bullying? Get me beaten and grounded, even kicked out of school, right? That's fine. I'll find my chance, out of everyone's sight, and kill you." Her pupils contracted, but she didn't dare respond. I clenched her jaw, smiling menacingly. A barefoot person isn't afraid of losing shoes. Life for life. I won't lose out, will I? She bit her lip, glaring spitefully, yet didn't dare challenge me. I smirked, holding up my phone. The scandalous scenes on the screen changed her expression dramatically. She reached to grab it, but I easily dodged. Don't think stealing my phone erases everything. Me and my friends set it to auto-send on social media. If I don't cancel it, it'll go out every weekend. You can try touching me. Ruining your reputation is minor, but if Gavin finds out you set him up to potentially ruin his life. What do you think? Will he spare you? Jessica finally looked scared. Her pretty face turned pale. What do you want? I pouted innocently. I just want to pass my college entrance exams peacefully. After they're over, I'll delete everything. She had no choice but to agree. To thank you, I'll give you a tip. Next summer, the school's organizing a trip to France. The deposit is due these days. You've always wanted to go, right? Knowing my parents, they probably won't say no to you. Her eyes sparkled as she gave me a wary look. What's in it for you? I shook my head. Nothing. I just want to complete your little love story. If I ask for something in return, it'd be another story. She could easily turn against me and call the cops, pinning threats and intimidation on me. But someone as pure and timid as me, how could I threaten anyone? I'm just protecting myself. She can't pin anything on me. That night, Jessica's depression hit again. She trashed a room full of stuff, and our parents nearly called an ambulance. She broke down crying. What's so great about not having been to France? Do they think they're better because they have money? Just $5,000. It's not like I can't make that once I'm grown. Why trample on my dignity? This time, I've got to go. To not take this opportunity would be to die. Her acting was on point, raging, banging her head against the wall, crying till she spasmed, dragging my parents deeper. From $1,000, they ended up at $5,000, without hesitation. And as Jessica gradually tested their limits, she didn't stop, asking for more and more. But my parents were just regular working folks, in this small town, barely pulling $1,000 a month together, wore themselves out bleeding for nothing. They turned their eyes to my room door. I stayed inside, clutching the bank card my grandmother left me, and closed the door, drowning deeper, only they'd get stuck. They can't pull me down with them. Using the hard-earned money my parents doted on her, Jessica and her true love built a little love nest near school. She came late or left early just to spend time with him. I moved into the dorm and, without Jessica bothering me every other day, I stuck to the top student in our class, Amy, asking questions and borrowing notes. Though Amy was distant and aloof, her head mostly held high. She was covered in designer brands but showed no sign of the typical rich kid's arrogance. Her short, cropped hair highlighted her sharp features and made her unapproachable. People feared her, but I didn't. I admired her courage, envied her discipline. While others rested on their family's wealth, she stayed up studying to secure her top rank and scholarship. Amy, please, help me with just one more question, just one, okay? Annoyed, she was ready to move out of the dorm, grabbing her thermos cup as an escape to get water, but before leaving her seat, she froze. The thermos was filled with perfectly warm water. You? I nodded. As a thank you, is that all right? I also gladly took on the task of fetching water, washing dishes, and cleaning the entire dorm, even washing socks till they were gleaming white. In my past life in despair, I'd done plenty of dirty and degrading work. This was truly nothing. But she felt some shame and awkwardness and only reluctantly granted me 10 minutes a day, whether asking questions or borrowing notes, strictly forbidding me from touching her stuff again. I agreed, opting for rewards over chores. Only a fool would refuse. In those 10 perfunctory minutes lay my great fortune. My prearranged questions stunned her when I laid them out. Red pen marked areas I couldn't understand, yellow highlighted steps or solutions I questioned, black question marks for fundamental knowledge gaps. You? I really want to learn. Look, these books are intact. No longer the ones Jessica, suffering depression, repeatedly tore to shreds. Her shocked gaze lingered on my face before she finally turned away. If you really want to learn, I can help you. But, your fundamentals are terrible. Please, get the basics down before asking me, okay? Okay. Maybe surprised by my straightforwardness and humble persistence, any thoughts she had of mocking me got stuck. Getting guidance from a pro was definitely better than fumbling through the books alone. To nail the basics, I studied alongside her. As she went through level 4 exams repeatedly, I was writing out vocabulary lists till they were familiar. When she studied computer science books, I was tackling physics problems. By the time her advanced math scored 90+, I could just pass my math tests, but it wasn't enough. It still wasn't enough. So, while she was sleeping, I put in my earbuds and listened to some audio lessons. When she stood on the rooftop, staring into the distance, I was hunched over my chemistry papers, trying to finish them. While she argued with her family over the phone, smashing dishes, I went through my mistakes in my study notes. If you want to cry, just cry. There's no one else here. But she just smiled bitterly and said, why should I cry? They're blind and heartless. The ones who should be slapped by reality and apologize to me are them. It turns out, being the daughter of a wealthy family doesn't exempt you from feeling invisible and overshadowed by a brother who's favored more. They were so scared Grandpa might leave his fortune to me that they locked me in the villa when he was too sick to get out of bed. I wasn't let out until after he passed. Their precious son got everything they wanted, but the person I loved the most passed away regretfully. I'll never forgive them, ever. In a wealthy family, favoritism can be deadly. The nasty scar on her thigh was from a car accident last year. I was hurting so much, but they just said sorry to him, glossed over it, and I was wrong for even trying to hold them accountable because no one was there to stand up for me. Lily, live strong and keep going. Even a lonely tree can stand tall on its own. I nodded hard and studied even more diligently. By the next monthly exam, I moved up 12 places. No longer at the bottom. She leaned back in her seat, curved her lips into a smile, and gave me a thumbs up. The March sunshine fell through the window, hitting her sharp features, and I felt like I was seeing a sword being unsheathed. That was our one-of-a-kind, fierce youth. But I knew I wanted to go to college and get far away from everything in this city that held me back. My current grades weren't nearly enough. I needed to follow in her footsteps, tackling each challenge life threw at me one by one. Until Jessica's teacher showed up in our class. With a worried face, she asked me how Jessica was doing. Apparently, she hadn't shown up to school for a week. Of course, I knew she was blatantly living with her true love now. I'd even seen her on the back of his roaring motorcycle, a scarlet cigarette in her mouth, laughing loudly and freely as I returned late from a night class. When she saw me, her eyes were full of mockery. Mocking my dull, joyless youth, trapped in a mire I couldn't escape, stagnant like still water compared to her vibrant 18 years. But that night, my heart was bubbling and overflowing because I had finally passed math for the first time. That sense of fulfillment and joy, she wouldn't get it either. Faced with the teacher's questions, I pretended to be clueless and replied firmly, I've been living in the dorm for a month, haven't been home in a while. I deliberately raised my hand, revealing the sleeve of my worn-out hoodie, stopping any further questions. Thanks to my parents' favoritism, they chose to attend Jessica's parent-teacher meetings whenever possible, never even glancing at me across the street. When teachers stopped them at the school gate, asking why they couldn't spare just one to meet with me, they looked at me hiding behind the teacher with shame, and to shift the blame, they yelled at me, with grades like that, we'd be embarrassed to show our faces. With those grades, you might as well be stupid. We'd have been better off birthing a pig. Even when the teacher criticized them for not being good parents, to save face and vent their anger, they slapped me right there, yelling I was a burden they shouldn't have had. The teacher shouted after them, your daughter doesn't have a single complete textbook or notebook. Shouldn't we discuss how she can study in such an environment? Their footsteps didn't falter, as they replied, let her study however she wants. What does she want? Our lives. In my past life, I felt ashamed by my parents' disdain, but not in this one. I moved openly into the dorms, wore the worst clothes, ate the cheapest meals. Letting everyone know I was the neglected one, the one sent to live at school during the crucial third year of high school. Victims should never feel ashamed because from start to finish, it was never our fault. The teacher looked surprised. So critical of a time, and your home is close. Why are you staying in the dorms? I imitated Jessica, lowered my head, and looked pitiful. My parents said to avoid upsetting Jessica. She was taken aback, awkwardly letting me leave. As soon as I turned away, she called my parents. They excused themselves, claiming the child's health was most important, but I knew they were desperately scraping together money for Jessica's medical expenses. So much so that Jessica's publicized relationship with a delinquent was all over school, but my parents were clueless. Until Jessica pushed things too far and demanded an outrageous amount from them. For the first time, my parents came to school specifically to wait for me. The sunset painted the sky a fiery red, but the May evening with no breeze felt suffocating. They stood on the edge of the playground, their faces void of warmth. Hand over the bank card your grandmother gave you. We're in a pinch. Just think of it as a loan, Dad said assertively. Mom chimed in, with your grades, you're not getting into college. It's pointless to keep it. We're your parents, so we should manage it for you. Hand it over quickly, Jessica is waiting, she needs it urgently. I smirked. This day had finally come in this lifetime too. In the past life, they held me down on the cold floor, searched the room, and couldn't find that bank card. They withheld water from me for 3 full days, forcing me to surrender the card and my future. I clutched the report card in my pocket, glanced back at the classroom. Classmates and teachers leaned over the railing, encouraging me to hand it over. Because in 3 months, I went from last to the top 30. Though I was only in 29th place, staying up until 1 a.m., waking at 5:30 a.m. for morning study, I outdid the most diligent student, earning the acknowledgement of classmates and teachers. They no longer mocked me but applauded me warmly. Because they knew how lonely and determined it was to charge forward with no one at my back. So, knowing that it was rare for my parents to visit, they slipped my report card into my hand. The teacher said, "Show your parents how amazing Lily is." Classmates pushed me out the door, "Go on, go. They must miss you. When they see your report card, they'll realize their mistakes. If it were my parents, they'd be over the moon. A prodigal returns better than gold. As long as you try, they'll see it." Their kindness and support were like guiding lamps on my lonely path, urging me to run faster so I could finally take control of my life. But, the moment I handed the report card over, my impatient father snatched it, tearing it to pieces, flinging them everywhere. "With such embarrassing grades, you dare bring it for me to sign? Give me the bank card quick, Jessica needs it now." The flying shards couldn't shake my numbness, but they doused the eager hopes of my teacher and classmates. Even Amy, who usually stayed out of everything, had her hands in her pockets, leaning against the railing, a deep frown on her face. I looked up for the first time, meeting their eyes. Sorry, good-hearted people behind me. With a slight lift of my eyebrows, I started fighting back. But what if I could push myself a bit more and get into college? Why should I ruin my future for your precious daughter? Just because I grew up in a dump? The two of them were stunned I didn't let them off, continuing sarcastically, or because I was born from trash. The two of them flared up, faces changing dramatically. "You little brat, what did you say?" I tilted my head innocently. "I said you're garbage." "What, do I have to throw you in a trash can to prove it?" My mom lost it and shoved me hard. I fell to the ground. "I shouldn't have had you before marriage, should have crushed you in that rental room than letting you ruin my life." "Tom," she said, "look at the kid your mom raised." I said don't have her, but you insisted. You let your mom raise her, turned into this disaster. Better to have crushed her at birth. Her eyes were red with anger, but I felt nothing. Then why didn't you? Did you think I wanted to be born from you? A couple of unworthy parents. My dad, clueless from my mom's tears, couldn't stay calm watching my defiant attitude. He slapped my face hard. "You're crazy. If you don't apologize to your mom and give us your bank card, we won't recognize you." Covering my face, I smiled brightly. "Sure, without trash parents like you, I'm no trash either." "Sounds great. My dad was shocked. I think you got corrupted at school, hanging around with the wrong crowd. Let's go see your teacher. I want to know how they teach someone like you. With that, he grabbed my sleeve and dragged me to the office. Caught off guard, I fell to the ground. My bare arm scraped raw on the playground, making me gasp. They didn't care. They pulled me up roughly, shoving me into the classroom. My eyes turned red. I lowered my head, trying to gain some sympathy. In front of the teachers and classmates, my mom started listing my 10 sins, crying her eyes out. She used every degrading word ever used for a 20-year-old girl on me. My dad thumped the table, demanding from the teacher, "Is this how you educate here? How can she even study if she can't be a decent person? I'm taking her home today, get me the paperwork." That's their usual tactic, using school as leverage over me. Since compulsory education was over, they could cut off my high school. And back home, I'd be a sitting duck. In the past, I would have begged them to let me finish my studies. But not now. My ID was placed on the desk. I, teary-eyed, said weakly, "Mom, Dad, I'm over 20 now. I can decide my life. The money Grandma left is enough for school. I haven't used any of yours. Didn't you not want this burden long ago?" My mom exploded, weeping and raging, even throwing the teacher's materials, demanding my grandma's money. To keep it from me, she'd do anything. You're giving it, like it or not. Despite the teacher's persuasion and classmates' scolding, their rowdy behavior persisted. After cursing, they tried to hit me again. That's enough. This is my office. You want to cause a scene, do it outside. They paused, turning to me, breathing heavily. "Lily, are you really cutting ties with us?" "I'm not," I cried, tears rolling down. "I'm gonna report you for domestic abuse." The cops came unexpectedly. I had called them. I pointed at the teachers and classmates. "My parents abuse me. They can testify." I spent months setting the stage for this moment. The purity and sense of justice in youth were overwhelming. They all pointed at my parents, defending me. Her arm and face injuries were right in front of us. Who knows what else they've done? Not just abuse, they want to lock her up at home against her will. Who knows what's next? Physical injuries are one thing, but the psychological harm is deeper. Here, look. The teacher took out my forgotten diary, detailing 3 years living under their roof. How my birth was their youth's mistake, yet they blamed me instead. How my return disrupted their happy family of 3, making me the hated outsider. Publicly wishing for my death, saying having me was pointless. How they used me as a maid while I slept on a folding chair, mocked by my sister as little trash. Pages filled with my mom's curses, dad's accusations, and sister's bullying. On the last page, I bleakly hinted, "Is death the only escape from all this?" The ink bled, like teardrops on the page. Kind teachers pitied me. Fellow students sympathized. Only my parents argued with the cops trying to mediate, all lies. We treated her well. We gave her food and drink. She even stole our bank cards, won't give them back. She's 20 now, face criminal charges, teach her a lesson. But their words, faced with teachers' and classmates' evidence and rebuttals, were insignificant. Even the cops, seeing my bleeding arm, were shocked. Domestic abuse is illegal, even for parents. We gave birth to her. Why can't we punish? We'll hit her right now. My dad maintained his pride and dignity with his slap. But not this time. As he grabbed me, the cops tackled him with a judo move. Stubborn as ever, they were taken to the station for education. This was the first gift I gave them, on the day I finally stood up. Wiping away my tears, Amy's voice snapped me back, "Playing the part very well, aren't you?" I stared at Amy, heart tightening. She just curled her lips and smiled. "I can read lips. Even though the playground is far, I caught every word of your conversation." A gentle breeze brushed through her long hair, giving off an air of confidence that filled me with panic. "Are you going to expose me?" "If I wanted to expose you, why wait till now?" "Just protecting myself, not hurting anyone innocent, so it doesn't matter." Besides, if it were me, I'd stop at nothing. Her cold eyes startled me. Stop at nothing? I'm the same. I took a deep breath, noticing sweat accumulating in my palms. Just one more month and I can finally escape this hell. Amy, do you think I can make it? The sunset touched her face, revealing her determination. Of course, you'll succeed. Success belongs to people like us. But pain comes too. Susan and Tom, once released, sought me out more than once. Thanks to my classmates' warnings, I kept my distance. They finally cornered me in a dark alley one night during self-study. Trying to hide? Give back my money and house deeds, or I'll beat you to death today. His slap sent me crashing into the wall, my face drenched in blood. The next second, police sirens blared. My classmates, wary of these wolves, had already called the cops when they saw them approach menacingly. This time, it wasn't just a lecturing session. I'll sue you both and make sure you end up in jail. After the police repeatedly explained the law, the two aggressive bullies finally got scared. We're your parents, hitting and scolding you are for your own good. Is it worth it over something like this? We won't hit you again. It's not easy for us, with work and life being so stressful and your sickly sister, and you're lagging in studies. What can we do? They cried and whined about their struggles, as if their lives were so terrible that beating and abusing me would make things better. But I watched coldly. When the drama ended, I handed them a paper. I really want to cut ties, but the law doesn't allow it. You don't deserve to be called parents. So, the house Grandma gave you, I'll give up my share, but you have to sign an IOU $4.40,000. If you ever force me to support you, I'll make you pay me back the $40,000. How's that? Nothing personal, just hoping for a peaceful separation, without bothering each other. As they hesitated, I turned and left. I ran into Jessica, who was seething with hatred. I smiled. Not cutting ties might not be so bad. I'll still have a share of Grandma's house, worth tens of thousands. She gritted her teeth so hard, I laughed in a corner until I cried. It took me 20 years to cut this umbilical cord. When the IOU was signed and our ties severed, the house was transferred to Jessica's name. Not afraid of your tricks, the house is Jessica's now. They were pleased with themselves, unaware they were walking into a trap I had set up for them. Jessica's love couldn't fill her stomach, but she wouldn't let her lover work hard. Egged on by friends, she turned to online loans. With a few clicks, money seemed to come easily, leading to carefree spending. She bought heaps of branded cosmetics and clothes. Threw lavish parties, reveling in being called sis-in-law, her vanity greatly satisfied, thinking her life was at its peak. Even Gavin embraced her, saying, for life, she's the only sis-in-law, Jessica. Anyone who disrespects her, I'll break their limbs. She was triumphant, having both fame and fortune. Until the compound interest became unbearable. Now, that house was her lifeline. My scheme just made sure they'd all end up with nothing after all. They'd never leave me even a single door or window of that house. My roommates celebrated with a cupcake and candle. Congrats on your new lease on life. From now on, today will be your birthday every year. Repressed tears finally fell as the candles burned. Finally, I was standing tall, living life. It took a lifetime plus 6 months. Now they've got their own things to focus on, leaving me alone for now so I can take my exams. Jessica, unaware of her approaching doom, strutted up to me bragging. You're so dumb, kicking yourself out willingly. Heard you're doing well enough to make it to college? Congrats. I put on my headphones, ignoring her taunts, which only angered her. Avoiding me? Ashamed? Lucky me, getting depression. They have no choice but to serve me. I curled my lips in a smile. So what about you? Why are you sacrificing yourself? For Gavin? She looked at me with pity, full of scorn. Ugh, such a country bumpkin. Don't blabber about love if you've never been in a relationship. We sacrifice for love. Sacrifice? So outdated. I nodded. Oh, so do your parents know you sold their house for true love? Will they give you their blessings? Her breath hitched, her face changed. What do you know? It's just a matter of time for them to recognize and accept me, unlike you, who'll always be despised and cast out. Don't forget to delete the video after the exams. She bumped into me, brushing past. Through her thin shirt, I noticed her slightly rounded belly. She was carrying a burden like me, a premature stain that would lead them to ruin. I knew she had convinced Gavin to come teach me a lesson once I deleted the video. Even arranging a truck to send me to the mountains for crying. The same experience, same tragedy, they hoped to replay on me. But this time, I wouldn't let them win because that old pervert finally found his way to Gavin after I put in the effort. You're living a cushy life in the city, while I'm starving in the cold, without even a warm place to rest. It's not fair, is it? A son living in comfort, while I suffer? It's not right. From the birthmark behind Gavin's ear, I confirmed his link with the old pervert. Jessica alone didn't have the heart, nor the means to send me off to the mountains. In the end, it was Gavin's idea and connections at play. This time, no sweet words from Gavin could send the old pervert back to the mountains. Because the old pervert had his sights on Jessica. Coincidence? Not at all. Jessica, egged on by her little brother, got a vibrant rose tattoo on her chest. That hit the heart of the old pervert. In my past life, he used an embroidery needle to tattoo a rose on me, ruining my chest and back to satisfy his twisted desires. In this life, I gave that flower to Jessica. When he forced pregnant Jessica onto the couch to bite that rose, Gavin caught him in the act. Father and son fought, and the old pervert's authority was challenged. He got so mad he stabbed Gavin. That's when the cops busted in and dragged my past life's nightmare away in a pool of blood. Why did they come? Because I reported him. The evidence? Another skeleton in the pigpen that turned out to be Gavin's mom. She was sold to the mountains, gave birth to Gavin, and after being nearly driven insane in captivity, she tried to kill the old bachelor but was beaten to death and buried beneath the pen. Gavin watched his mom die and felt nothing. He even cursed her alongside his dad, calling her a worthless woman who deserved to die. Women should give everything for their families, even their lives. After getting stabbed, he chose to do the right thing and betray his dad. The old pervert's crimes were many, and now, prison awaits him. Gavin, worn out by the investigation about being an accomplice, hadn't come to bother Maine the stolen time. I pushed myself forward, with exams looming. Amy got her early admission notice and went back to her mansion, leaving the big dorm to me. Before she left, she gave me her notes and exams, saying I should find them useful since I finished this stuff back in freshman year. Her silhouette, flanked by drivers and maids, faded into the distance. I opened the notebook, and it said, "Break free, it's within reach. Life is worth it, and so are you." It made my eyes tear up, so I buried myself in practice tests. On exam day, I clutched the bank card close, whispering, "Grandma, having you is enough." With confidence in my stride, I walked into the exam hall. This time, my fate was in my own hands. 2 days of sweat, and as I signed my last answer, I stumbled out of the exam hall, collapsing onto my dorm bed. Half my burden lifted, the rest lay with Jessica. They owe me. Past and present, it's time to pay up. Now's perfect. Cops. I need to report a theft. The jewelry Grandma left me is missing. In the process of collecting evidence from my home, the camera in Tom's study would finally reveal all. It's a surprise I gave them, one they should be grateful for. Susan and Tom were fuming when they went to Jessica's rented apartment. Jessica, heavily pregnant, was lying on Gavin's lap, enjoying grapes. "What's the worry?" she said. "I'm the only daughter they have. The house will be mine anyway. And with the baby, shouldn't they give us $10,000 a month? We'll be fine." Gavin kissed her cheek. "You're the best, but will your parents really give us that much?" Jessica sneered. "Of course they will. If push comes to shove, I'll fake another breakdown. They always fall for it. They should work to provide for us, and we can live our own happy lives." Susan could no longer hold back, kicked open the door, pointing at Jessica, trembling with shock. "You demon. Is this how you manipulate us? For this riffraff, you hurt your father and me? Now you want my life too? Tom was furious, shameless brat. Pregnant at 19 with a bastard, why don't you just die? Jessica, whose face fell as her mask was removed, shrugged it off. Me? Shameless? When you had the squirt you weren't much older than I am. Why didn't you call yourselves shameless then? At least I'm doing it for love, to give my baby a home, unlike you, who couldn't care for your child. Not deserving of being parents and forcing them into a life less than a beggar's. Hitting them at will, punishing them. Who do you think you are? Tom and Susan were shaky with anger, but Jessica didn't back down. You've heard it all now. This place is too small for 3. Rent us something bigger. You can afford the rent. Oh, and don't forget to give some money for formula. We can sort the rest later. Want me to acknowledge you? Show some sincerity. Tom and Susan, unable to bear it, slapped Jessica. And used to such treatment, Jessica fought back instantly, hitting them back. In the scuffle, Jessica hit a table corner, bleeding heavily. Gavin, seeing his woman hurt and the baby lost, was furious. He picked up a chair, hitting Tom until he was bleeding and unconscious. With the ambulance stuck at the construction-filled street's end, it never made it through. After the chaos, Jessica's delay in receiving help led to losing both the child and her uterus. Tom, suffering a severe head injury, was left a vegetable. During the chaos, Susan had sent videos from Tom's study into the family chat. Their once pure and perfect daughter was now the talk of the town. Jessica, in utter despair, confronted Susan about it. In the hospital stairwell, they fought like they never had before. Whether by accident or intention, Jessica pushed Susan, causing her to tumble down and pass out in a pool of blood. Panicking, Jessica fled the hospital. Finding refuge with Gavin in his rented room with nowhere else to turn, they plotted to escape to Myanmar for a new life. As for their fate, I found out 2 years later from the news. Jessica was found dead, her body violated and organs removed. I heard that the body was missing limbs. Living for 2 years in such a state, it must have been miserable. And after Gavin was completely used up, he was sealed forever in concrete. After doing too many evil deeds, they experienced their downfall. After I started college, Susan tried to reach me through someone. By then, she was bedridden. She lost her house and daughter, and her husband rotted in bed, unable to be cared for. She thought of me again, trying to force me to drop out and take care of her, to even look after her till the end. Unethical internet influencers were camped outside my dorm, pushing their agenda as if they were righteous, trying to tear me down. But that IOU, along with countless classmates and teachers at my school, stood by meth giant wave they created barely rose before crashing back, leaving Susan stuck in her basement. She finally admitted her wrongdoings, begging on camera for a meeting with me, but I didn't go. I scrolled through messages on my phone, feeling restless. The tycoon's son, caught doing drugs with a group, ended up in jail and lost his eligibility for a massive inheritance. Turns out, Amy went back only after she decided on her path, delivering a blow that changed everything. In the wealthiest families, a son in prison is no longer in the running for heir. Naturally, she became the sole successor. The girl who used to gaze into the distance finally held everything that belonged to her. A month later, I got a call from the police station. Susan was dead. They deduced that Susan, akin to a rat crossing the street, hounded by insults and revilements, became a notorious pest. No carer would take the job, and alone in her struggle, she fell out of bed, hitting her head hard. The bleeding in her brain spread, leading to her death that day. The feud between us ended the day I signed the death certificate for Susan. I stood in front of her grave and smiled. This world doesn't have that many coincidences, it only has my deliberate choices. Bless you guys, for being reunited as a family. Half a year later, I visited Amy's school and met the breeze that journeyed alongside me. She grew her hair long, exuded cool elegance, and stood out in a crowd, glowing brightly. She hugged me tightly and handed me a thick notebook, smiling joyfully. Congratulations. Just a little more effort, and I'll be here waiting for you. A life without obstacles isn't always smooth, there's still hardship in striving upwards. I believe in you. At the end of the notebook, there was a receipt for a luxury piano. Chase your dreams, it's never too late. Yep, I still have my piano dream. Take one step out, and there are thousands more to take. Life is endless, and so is the fight. How could such a youth be regrettable?